you see what's behind me. You see what's here. If you remember from the good old days of literally a couple of videos back, we had the mini shelf, right? We had the cubes, we had the books in the cubes, but I realized that I've outgrown the cubes, and now I needed rectangles. I needed shelves. I needed height. I needed width. I needed depth. I needed everything that this bad boy gives me. Hello! Welcome to my 2023 bookshelf tour. My name is Arish, or Encho. You can call me whatever you want. And this channel is mainly about books. That's about it. Maybe some departures from there in the future, but right now it's just about books, everything that I like to read. And I've been meaning to do a bookshelf tour ever since I started this BookTube account. It's just that I didn't feel like I had enough of a repertoire to show you guys, but now I feel like I do, and I have it all set up all nice and cute and fun. So I get to do that now. I'm super excited. So let's get started with the first shelf right here. Don't know why I did that. Don't. Hey, just look at the shelf. Don't think about what I just did. Just look at the shelf. Shelf number 1. We're skipping this, okay? This I'm going to talk about afterwards. Shelf number 1 is the Chima shelf. Basically, books by the author Cinda Williams Chima, my favorite author, and contains some of my favorite series of all time. And we're going to go through them starting now. Let's start with the first of Cinda Williams Chima's books, the Air Chronicles. The Warrior Heir, the Wizard Heir, the Dragon Heir, the Sorcerer Heir, and the Enchanter Heir. Okay, the Air Chronicles are named as such because in the story, it's set in Ohio. Trinity, Ohio is where this story starts, and basically you have Jack Swift in the Warrior Heir, who is an athletic high schooler, and he gets a visit from one of his mother's quote-unquote old friends, who is a doctor. And unbeknownst to him, this was the same doctor that saved his life as a kid, who brought him back to life, technically. But how did she do that? Well, what she did was she implanted a warrior's crystal in his heart, making him a warrior. Now, what are warriors? What are wizards? What does all this have to do with the magic in this story? So this story is about basically the magical people who live kind of in the background of society, who quote unquote still run society. And you have ruling houses run by the wizards. Okay, the wizards mainly operate in terms of the hierarchy, and they employ warriors and other type of magical people to do their bidding. Now, warriors were dying out because wizards were constantly putting warriors up to battle in coliseums against other ruling houses. Ruling houses were warring with each other, but with the use of warriors, not their own power. So what happened was warriors were dying out, and in order to do an experiment, the doctor said, well, I can save your son's life, she tells Jack's mother, but I can only save it if I'm able to implant a warrior's stone in his heart, a warrior's crystal in his heart, giving him the magic of a warrior, therefore, increased athletic ability and things like that. But then I get to come back for him later when I need him. That was the deal they made, and that's where the Warrior Heir starts. He is the heir to the, quote unquote cycle of warriors coming up and fighting. Great book, okay? The Air Chronicles is one of my favorite series of all time because it's just chock full of banter. It's set in modern day, so it's not like high fantasy where you have to expect very high level prose. It's very modern, very contemporary. The combat is fun. There's training arcs. There's just so much fun. It's basically this is what got me into young adult reading as a kid. Or I think I found this book late middle school, early high school is when I found this series, and I just fell in love with it. I really just fell in love with Cinda Williams Chima's style of writing, mainly. That's what really drugged me to it. And then just the characters themselves. So Jack's super lovable. There were twists in the book that I didn't see coming as a naive 14-year-old when I didn't know what foreshadowing was. The romantic interplay in his romantic counterpart, the entire friends dynamic, the whole group dynamic was really fun, really enjoyable to read along with. So I really enjoyed the warrior heir, and then I continued to the wizard heir, which follows a new main character. Then the reason why I love this series is because every single book has a different kind of main character it follows, because it follows the, you know, the theme of that book, which is warrior, so it was Jack Swift. The wizard heir follows Seth MacFarlane. The dragon heir follows Jason Haley and Madison Moss. The sorcerer heir actually follows, who is it? Emma and Jonah. I'll get to these two in a second. And then the enchanter heir follows Emma Claire Greenwood, who is, I think, following from the Emma and Jonah in here. So originally I thought the series was just these three, and then we were done. And then years later I discovered that there was another book, The Sorcerer Heir, and then another book, The Enchanter Heir. So what ends up happening? What ended up happening was the first three books follow this kind of war between the ruling houses, where you have antagonistic ruling houses who want wizards to be the ones who rule over society, and then you have wizards who say, no, we should just be in the background of society and help support the world as it is, the usual wizards versus non-wizards kind of thing. And then the next two books that come later on follow like the aftermaths of that war, but the lingering like animosity and antagonists and the lingering conflicts from the quote-unquote resolution that might have happened in the first three books. But going back to the characters, what I love is it all takes place in the same world. It all takes place kind of the same time period. So you have Jack Swift in the book 1, you have Seth MacFarlane in book 2, who then you obviously like, you know, links up with Jack Swift, and then you have a group of protagonists, and then you have Madison Moss and Jason Haley here to link up with the group protagonists. You have so you have a reoccurring theme of new characters, old characters coming together, and that is one of my favorite tropes in series, is when you can introduce new characters seamlessly and then make them get along, or even be antagonists with the old characters, but it interplays very well. But these are my first, this was my first foray into really like young adult, and the reason why I think it's still one of my favorites is because it was one of the first ones that really just like pulled me in. Love the banter. You know I love banter. Love the banter. Next one. Great. Next series is my personal all-time favorite series of all time in the entirety of time so far in my time in life, is the Seven Realms series, or what I like to call the Demon King. It's just that, right? And there's a little story behind this. So I discovered the Demon King when I was living in my hometown. We had a Hastings, which was like the bookstore there, right? Shout out Hastings. If y'all ever had a Hastings, you really knew where he was at, and now you're feeling old as fuck. So I would go to Hastings, and I found this new book, and I remember, I loved reading Cinda Williams Chima books as in terms of the Warrior Heir. Oh, this is a new series, I want to read it. So I bought it, I read The Demon King, and I just cranked through it immediately. The story sucked me in like a you-know-what. Anyways, I don't know what I meant to say by that. Anyways, the Demon King follows Han Alistair, who is a street thug living in the streets of Fellsmarch. And he is basically trying to fend for himself and his mother and sister. Okay, listen guys, I know I said this is my favorite book, but it's been so long since I read these. Excuse me if I'm missing out on certain details and I have to go back and check, okay? But anyway, so yeah, we have Han, who was trying to fend for himself, his mother, and his sister, Mari. His mother is also sick. In the Kingdom of the Felms, in the big castle, right, you have the princess, Reza Anna Mariana, who is the heir to the throne, and she is under the influence of both her mother and the court high wizard. And there's a lot of politics going on. The politics are basically the wizards trying to get control of the kingdom. But basically, Reza's issue is dealing with this political internal strife in her castle, in her family, and trying to combat that, trying to save her mother, save her sister, but she's constantly on the influence of the High Wizard and his son, Mika Bayer. And then third person is Eamon Byrne. Eamon Byrne is probably one of my personal favorite characters in any story because he is just a straight man. He is a just gentleman, and he does what needs to be done in order to save those around him. Man, I fucking love this series so much. It's so good. The banter is great. The magic system is so nice. The magic system is basically these amulets that they have to wear around their bodies, because the way the magic works in this world is magic wells up inside of you um, like a waterfall or a pool of water, and your body itself is the dam. But if the magic builds up too much, and your body obviously can only contain so much magic, magic starts leaking out of you. It starts affecting your health and potentially the health of other people, and it becomes catastrophic. It becomes fatal. So what do you have to do? You have to basically store your magic in these amulets, and then when you want to use the magic, you use the amulets as a way to channel the magic out of you into whatever form you want to bring it out in. So I personally loved that so much. I loved the aesthetic of the Demon King amulet, and just the story that took place because of it, right? I loved the antagonist conflict. I loved the love triangle that was happening in this book. Obviously, you have a headstrong female protagonist. You also have a confident, headstrong male protagonist, and then you have the straight male protagonist. Rhaesa and Aemon were childhood friends. That trope. But then you have the bad boy Han coming in, who's a bad boy but a good guy at the same time. Everything about this just was a great package. Getting back to the story about me and Hastings, right? So basically, I read The Demon King the first time, but this was around the time when she's just released The Demon King, so I didn't know when the actual other books were coming out. So every couple of months or whatever, when I'd go to Hastings, I would always go to the shop and see when's the next book, when's the next book, when's the next book. So what happened was I read The Demon King at one point, and then months later I saw that The Exiled Queen was out. So I wanted to read The Exiled Queen. I had to read The Exiled Queen, but what happened was I just couldn't get through it the first time for some reason. There's just a part in the middle of the book that was just so boring, or whatever's happening in my life caused me to put it down, so I could never get back to it. And I was like, damn. So months later, I tried to go back to reading the series when The Grey Wolf Throne came out. And as you can see, right, The Grey Wolf Throne is this big, and The Exiled Queen is almost double the size. So you can imagine trying to get through a chonker of a book to go into a thin book like this. But anyways, what happened was, anytime a new installment of a book series comes out, I like to read through the series again, knowing full well that, I might not remember certain details when getting to the next installment, so I like to read through them again. So I read through Demon King again. This is my second time reading it. And then I tried to get through Exiled Queen again, and really had to force myself through it to get through it. But I finally got through it, and then I read The Grey Wolf Throne. And then when Crimson Crown came out, I read through Demon King, Exiled Queen, Grey Wolf Throne again to read Crimson Crown. So basically, I read the book so many times that I just fell just deep in love with the world, personally speaking, right? This was also around in high school when I was an angsty teenager, and I was just having a lot of issues with myself, and this world was just a massive escape for me. This world was just the escape for me, and that's all I needed in life was the Demon King, the Exiled Queen, the Grey Wolf Throne, and the Crimson Crown. But this is my favorite book series of all time, the Seven Realms series. Cinda Williams Chima wrote it so well, in my opinion. I love Han Alistair. I love Aemon Byrne. I love Rhaesa and Mariana, and I love the supporting characters as well. Everything about it was so good to me. But I want to show you guys another thing. So back when I was first starting my BookTube account, I was just online, and I was going through book titles, or just going through books, seeing different book covers and stuff, and I stumbled upon this version of The Demon King, which is a European version of the novel, or the European version of the book cover. So what happened was, I looked at these, right, and I was like, okay, Arish, you don't have the money to be spending things like this, but you have the money to be spending things like this. So what are you gonna do? I spend things like this. And look at the continuity in these covers, right? I do love the amulets, the chains and the amulets and the things like that in these, right? But this is such a classic look to me. The staff, I'm gonna bring it closer to the camera. The staff with the dragon on it, and the orb in the middle with a ship inside of it. It was just a beautiful, to me, this is a beautiful book cover, because it is just fantasy incarnate to me. And so each of these have their own theme. It's still the dragon staff, but then in the first one you have the ship. In the second one, you have a castle rampart looking thing. Basically, this is taking place in like the encampment in the training school and things like that, which is what I think the structure is. The third one has the wolves in it because the mascot, the emblem of the Mariana Queens is a wolf. And that becomes important in the Grey Wolf Throne. And then the last one is the Crimson Crown when they're trying to, end the conflict of this castles and this political strife. So these are just, in my opinion, amazing book covers, and I'm just so happy that I got my hands on them, basically. So the Shattered Realms series is basically the next generation of the Seven Realms. I know Cindy Williams Chima says that you don't necessarily have to read the Seven Realms to then read the Shattered Realms. It's technically its own standalone, but knowing the story that came before this really helps you understand and really actually activates your emotions much more with this story. So I would really recommend reading the Seven Realms before you read the Shattered Realms. So the conflict in this novel is basically a country and its own queen ruler is trying to raise her army of blood-swarmed men, and she's trying to go to war with the other realms, try to take over the other realms, given her crazy magical ability. That's basically the conflict. And then similar to the Air Chronicles, you have a book per certain characters, introducing new characters that then get interwoven with old characters, and I really love that. A lot of these characters have their own magical abilities that they're trying to grow into and develop, and they realize, oh, at some point, I'm fucking OP as fuck. Things like that. I did like the novels. I didn't like them as much as Seven Realms because it didn't hit me as much, and I think there were some parts in the novels that kind of drug on. I did love the gay romance in book 3 between Evan and one of the characters. I did really enjoy Ash, or Adrian Sohan, from book 1. He is a very gifted mage and healer. I don't remember a lot about this novel because I read it back in college, which was probably around like 5 or so years ago. I do want to reread this series once I reread all of Cindy Williams Chima's books anyway, for this channel and for an archived review on this channel. But I would just recommend reading this book because it is a Chima series, right? It is a Chima novel in classic Chima-esque. There's going to be banter. There's going to be comedic relief. There's going to be a good amount of action, a good amount of magic. The lore is still really good. She does not just throw shit at you for the sake of throwing shit at you, in my opinion. She really does set up things very nicely, and it makes sense. So I really enjoyed it, and I might actually pick up the alternate book covers. I'll put them on the screen right now for you. I am not the biggest fan of character portraits in book covers. I'm really usually not. I like more interesting designs, and I like the amulets that kind of came with the alternate book cover. So maybe at some point I'll grab those when I have more place to put Chima novels, basically, or I'll have to dedicate 2 shelves to Chima. I'll have to fix this later. But the last book is the Children of Ragnarok as part of the Chima shelf, right? This is her most recent novel. I actually did a 24-hour read over on TikTok about this book because it's Chima, Norris Mythology. 2 things I really enjoy: Chima novels and Norse mythology. Perfect. Okay, so the Runestone Saga starts with the Children of Ragnarok. The story takes place after the events of Ragnarok, and if you know Norse mythology, you know that Ragnarok is where the world is ending and the realms are all split up and they're not connected anymore. So each of the realms is left to fend for itself. That's where our story takes place. And I personally really love this, really like this. It didn't really hit me as much, and I think it's because I tried to just read through it in 24 hours instead of actually taking my time with it. So I sped through a lot of things. I didn't pay attention to certain details and things like that, but all in all, I enjoyed the novel. Still, it's Norse mythology. I'm really excited for book 2, mainly because I want to see how she expands on the foundation in book 1. It was a lot of foundational stuff. The characters themselves are cool. Personally, the characters themselves are super cool, and I'm just looking forward to book 2. I don't really have much to talk about this book right now because it was okay. I mean, it was good. It was not what I was expecting, but towards the end of it, it got really fucking good. But then I didn't like the way it ended because it just ended so nonchalantly and casually that it didn't feel like an ending, and it didn't even feel like a cliffhanger. It just dropped. So those are my only things about the book. But if you haven't read it already, it's a Chima novel, dog. read a Chima novel. And she actually brings back a lot of like Chima-esque themes from the other books into this book, which I love how she has like a continuity of these are the kind of things that I'm going to put in my book, and I'm going to do that. And then it's a Chima novel because she puts those things in her book. That is the Chima shelf, people. The Chima shelf. Moving on. Welcome to the Weeb shelf. It has anime, it has manhwa, it has manga, it has Beyblade, it has Yu-Gi-Oh! Welcome to the Weeb shelf. This shelf is basically where I'm going to start my manga collection. And I'm going to sit down now because I'm tired. So, let's go through each of these, starting with that side. So, I have volume 1 of the Black edition of Death Note, which is volumes 1 and 2 in one book. This has its own story behind it because basically in high school was when I got into anime, but I never got into manga or manhwa until like way later in life. So one of my good friends, he was a good friend of mine, and we were both in band together. And at the end of our senior year in band, basically as like a send off to the senior members, our director has kind of like a gifting ceremony in a sense where they'll basically the different instrument groups, the sections, will gift their section leaders, or maybe the section leaders will gift certain things to their group. So, or people can just gift things to each other in general. So my good friend, knowing that I was getting into anime, he gifted me this Black edition of Death Note, which I read through like literally that weekend. I never finished the series, and I never finished Death Note. I just know as much as what happens in volumes 1 and 2, but that's where this came from, and it's always stuck with me because it was just a very genuine gift from a friend that I never expected. Not because I didn't expect anything from the friend. I just didn't know that, like, I didn't know I had friends like that out there who'd be willing to gift me things like this, and that's why this story, this book, and this in specific is very special to me. And it was also the first of my mangas. This was the first ever manga that anyone's ever given me. So I was just very honored by it. Yeah. Let's start with this. This is volume 54 of Fairy Tail. Now you might be wondering, Arish, why do you have the last volume of a manga, or one of the last volumes of a manga? And I'll tell you why. When I was getting into manga back in high school, Fairy Tail was one of my favorite mangas. Yes, because of the fan service. Yes, because of the friendship saves all. Yes, because of the banter. Yes, because of the action. Yes, because of everything. You're probably thinking why someone would like it. I liked it because of that. And I just love the anime, and I rewatched like 2 or 3 times within like the following 4 or 5 years of like when I loved this story. But when it was actually like the new seasons came out, and when it was finally ending, I don't like watching endings of stories. I don't like watching stories end because it closes the chapter, and I don't want closure because I'm toxic like that. So I just didn't watch the end of it. So my good friend, a different friend from the person who got me Death Note, still a band friend, but a good friend nonetheless. She's one of my best friends in life. She said, "Oh, let me just get him the last volume of the story as a joke for his birthday," and she gifted me the last volume of Fairy Tail. And that's why I have it. I'm never going to go back and finish Fairy Tail. I don't think so. And I'm never going to go back and read it. But I'm just going to have this just to have. That's basically it. The next one is Haikyuu. Now, if you don't know what Haikyuu is, you're living under a fucking rock. Go watch the anime. Go read the manga. Haikyuu is one of the best and one of my favorite sports mangas and sports anime out there because it is just amazing. It is about volleyball. It is about Karasuno High's volleyball team and their story to winning and getting to nationals and all the things that come with it. I love this story. I got the first volume when I was in the book loft in Columbus, Ohio, because I just wanted the first one. I don't know if I'm actually going to collect the full series of this. I just wanted the first one just to have, but like I said, I love it. Like, I love it so much that I got a ring based on like a Haikyuu inspired like ring that I wear. I don't have it on right now, but that's how much I love it. So it's an amazing story with an amazing cast of characters, not a sole protagonist, but a cast of characters, and it's amazing. It'll evoke all of your emotions to the point where I started training my high jumps because of this, because I was just watching these guys jump as high as fucking possible and slamming volleyballs down to other like high school people. I don't know what it was. It just hit me. Okay, it just works. Anime just really gets you going. You know what I mean? This is just Jujutsu Kaisen Volume .5, basically the Jujutsu Kaisen movie Zero that came out a couple of years ago. I went to go watch it with some friends, and they were basically giving these little pamphlets out there, which is basically kind of an explanation of the different characters, an explanation of the story, explanation of some terms, and some little mini stories and stuff. That's basically all this is. But it's just cute. I have it, and I enjoy it. And then last but not least, not even last at all, my favorite manga of all time, and actually now my favorite anime story of all time, is Magi the Labyrinth of Magic. What is Magi the Labyrinth of Magic? It is a story about this world where these divine towers have started erecting in the world, and in these divine towers, it's basically a dungeon, and which has tons of perils inside of it. These kingdoms that live inside this world send their champions to the towers to claim the towers, and if you claim the tower and you get to the treasure itself is a djinn. I'm gonna repeat that for you. The treasure itself is a djinn, a fucking djinn. Okay, you know, peak fantasy is when you get peak fantasy. In my opinion, is embodiment of magic. Peak fantasy is when you have a power that envelops you and makes you part of it. Peak fantasy is wearing the armor of your fucking djinn because you're that cool. Okay? Magi is a story of Aladdin and Alibaba. Alibaba, who is a Magi, who meets Aladdin in his journey and sees something in Aladdin that tells him, this is gonna be one of my best friends in life. I'm gonna make him a king. Because the Magi in this world support the kings of these kingdoms. So not each king, but like basically every king or champion who's conquered these dungeons has been sent there by a Magi to claim that dungeon, claim that djinn, and become a champion of the world, or a king's candidate. And that's where the story goes. The first 2 seasons are out with the spin-off season of Sinbad online. I would highly recommend you go and watch it. It is so good. And then basically in college, when I found the manga online, I just I ripped it apart. I sped read it so much. I love this story, and I want to actually collect all of these at some point in my life. I know the English versions are hard to come by for certain volumes, and it would cost around a couple, like $200-300 total for me to get all of them. But I think one of my goals in life is to collect all the volumes of Magi. So that's Magi for you. Before we get to these, just letting you know, I used to be an avid Yu-Gi-Oh player. I used to be an avid TCG collector. And I say collector because I never had friends to play these things with, and I never had friends to play card games with in growing up, often or at all. Nobody there wasn't like a card shop in my small town that I could go and play like games with, and I just didn't know anybody who did. So I would always collect games, play by myself. So I got more into collecting than like the actual dueling aspect of it, but I loved card games, right? I loved Pokemon back in the day. This is just a card my good friend Canvas gave to me after a dance session of ours, saying I gave him Luxray energy that day. This is a Pokemon card themed card from my good friend Sony, who's a content creator. Go follow him on Twitch and on Instagram. This was just one of his cards that came with one of his merch launches. I think it was Arc 2 of his merch. This is Thunderbreak Dragon off of the card game Vanguard, which I used to play, and I used to love playing the game. The anime was really good as well. And so I just fell in love with the dragon-themed archetype. So yeah, the Kagero, and you have the Narukami. So this is one of my favorite cards from there. From just one of the general like packs that I got is Thunderbreak Dragon. And fun fact, my handle online used to be Vowing Descendant. Right now it's Vowing Intro. But Vowing Descendant came from Cardfight Vanguard, where you had 2 cards, Dragonic Descendant and Vowing Sword Dragon or Vowing Breaker Dragon. So I just combined Vowing and Descendant into my online gaming handle, and that's kind of where the origin story of that, if you wanted to know. And then these 3 cards are actually part of my favorite archetype in Yu-Gi-Oh, the Blackwing archetype. So it's Blackwing, Elfin the Raven, Blackwing, Silverwind the Ascendant, and then Blackwing, Sure the Blue Flame. And I have my Yu-Gi-Oh cards somewhere, but these are just like 3 of my favorite cards that I've just put into foil and always kept, just because I love the archetype. At some point, I would like to get some of my favorite cards in Yu-Gi-Oh and kind of display them, but for now, I just have these guys, and so they sit with me here. And then last but not least of the knickknacks is Rock Leone, off of Beyblade Metal Fusion, which is the 2nd generation of Beyblade when they actually made the actual blades out of metal as opposed to the thicker plastic from the original Beyblade series. So this is Rock Leone. And when I first got back into Beyblade and I started watching Metal Fusion, I just fell in love with Beyblades again. I have a whole container of them back at home. And I used to like Beyblade with friends and everything. We all got into it. And Rock Leone was just one of my favorite Beyblades back then. Kyoga Tatagami was one of my favorite characters from the show, so I always kept Rock Leone with me, and till this day I just keep him with me just as like support. Now getting to these bad boys, right? Blue Lock. So Blue Lock. Blue Lock is a recent anime that came out, and the manga's been out for a couple of years. Really taken the internet by storm. Everybody loved it, especially with Blue Lock's crossover with the Japanese football team in FIFA. It was an amazing story. Blue Lock is the story of these high schoolers who are drafted into this Blue Lock program where this one old soccer player wants to revitalize Japan's soccer team. In order to do that, he wants to raise the world's best striker. He wants to develop the world's best striker. So he invites all these high schoolers to take part in the Blue Lock program, where all they do is live, eat, and breathe soccer in order to keep going forward and honing their abilities. And the reason why I love this story is, one, it talks about the ferocity of wanting to be the world's best, and the story itself is really cool, and the characters themselves are really cool. But what really hit me, what really hit me was the concept of ego in this story, where this main program director's main goal is to enhance the ego of all of these world number 1 candidates, because he's like, you can't be world number 1 unless you have the ego to be world number 1. Like, you have to have the ego to throw everybody else aside or devour everybody else's personalities in order for you to be on top. And I ate that up. I fucking ate that up. This thing has been my personality since I read this book. Literally anything anime themed that I do starts with Blue Lock and then goes to other things. So Blue Lock is another anime manga that I want to collect the volumes of as they get released in the English versions. Finally, last but not least, the English versions of the Tower of God manhwa. And this is actually one of my top 5 favorite stories of all time. If you had to have me choose between Tower of God and Magi, it would be a really big toss-up. But this is my favorite manhwa of all time, but one of my top 5 favorite just fantasy stories of all time. So I'm not going to say much about it, but I'm just going to give you some attributes about it, right? Amazing main character, fucking bitch of an antagonist. Everybody hates Rachel. Fuck Rachel. All my homies hate Rachel. If you know, you know. The world building, incredible. The artwork, stupendous. The cast of characters, when it comes to world building, you have like a whole thing of like cast of characters, right? Immeasurable. It's like a One Piece level cast of characters. There's just so many memorable characters as you're reading this, and it's still ongoing. I reread this series actually like every year. I'm about to start my next reread of Tower of God here soon once busy season starts at work and I can't really do anything else but read like chapters and stuff. Amazing. The magic system and the power scaling in this is also really fucking cool. It takes a little bit to get into in terms of knowing the terminology and knowing how the magic system is supposed to work and why certain things work better than others, etc., and where certain powers come from. But once you get the hang of it, your mind just hits a switch. Like, y'all talk about the Stormlight Archives, Brandon Sanderson, Mistborn, all that shit. Tower of God. Tower of God dog, this is where it's at. This, to me, is peak fantasy. And I'm going to leave it at that. But I want to collect all of these as well. That's the anime Weeb shelf. Now, we're going to go a little bit lower into just the other books that I have. Okay, let's just go like book by book, right? This is in no specific order. I'm just going to go through book by book. Show Your Work by Austin Kleon. The reason why this booktube actually started and the reason why I tried to become a content creator. I could tell you what it's about, but it's basically a book that tells you if you want to put yourself out there, do it daily, start small, document everything, and just do it. Just go for it. There's no harm in anything. Just go for it and then see what happens. Really good book. I actually mean to keep more of these on hand just to give to people, and I actually probably will order like 3 or 4 of these just to give to people because I think it's a book that like everybody should read, and it's very short. It takes you like a Sunday afternoon to read all this. Amazing. $100 Million Offers by Alex Hormozy. I have not read this one yet. I still need to. I got this back in January and still haven't read it, but this is basically a book that I got to help me with online business and starting a business and all the things that happened with it. I don't know anything about it, and so I got it because Alex Hormozy is one of my far-off mentors. There you go. Alex Hormozy is one of my far-off mentors, and one day if I wish to meet him, I want to be able to meet him actually having tried something in life. The Chorus of Dragons series by Jen Lyons, which is an epic fantasy series set in an age of demons, humans, and other magical creatures. It is its own world, own vernacular, own lore. Everything about it is its own unique style. I like to call it a mix between Aragon and the Bartimaeus trilogy. Is kind of how I started thinking about it, and it really pulled me with it because of Jen Lyons' unique way of telling the story. In book 1, it's unique. Book 2, it's different but still unique. I'm going to start reading book 3 actually. I take like a couple of months in between reading these books because to me, each book is like its own season of an anime where you just have to like, you could binge it, but you have to like take a break from it then come back is how I think about it. So I read The Runic Kings last year. I just read The Name of All Things in May, or right at the end of April in May, and I wanted to start reading Memory of Souls before work busy season happens. I think July and August might be my like Memory of Souls month. And then when I read all 5 of them, I want to bring you an archive review on the channel talking about the series as a whole. 2 versions of Shadow and Bone. This one I got because I wanted to read it. This one I got because I was in the book loft in Columbus, Ohio, and I saw this, and I really wanted this collector's edition that I really did not need to waste money on because the series isn't even like that, but I thought I needed it for an aesthetic bookshelf. I really didn't. But that's basically it. So I have Shadow and Bone. I actually have Six of Crows as well, but I lent it to a friend to read. The Grishaverse series itself is a very good series, in my opinion. Shadow and Bone definitely falls behind the other 2 duologies, even though the duologies are supposed to come after the events of the trilogy of Shadow and Bone. I think that everybody should at least read. I feel like everybody should read them because they're just that good of a book, and Six of Crows was my first 5-star read of the year, and then Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom were amazing, and then King of Scars and Rule of Wolves were also really amazing novels. And all the stuff that I wanted from Shadow and Bone was actually in those 2 duologies in terms of the magic system, the banter, the character development, the character interactions, etc., the world building. All that stuff happened in the duologies. Shadow and Bone is like average compared to it. But definitely read it. I would definitely recommend you reading it. I just have a single book of Ranger's Apprentice because back in the day, I would always read these at like school. But then I don't know why I think I bought book 6 when it actually came out so I could read it instead of waiting for it to come into my public library. But then I just gradually just started reading the books. My public library started getting books more often, so then I just got all the books through there and didn't really buy any more books from Ranger's Apprentice. This is one of my favorite series of all time. I just read through all 11 of the first novels last year, and I just this month read through all 5 of the current Royal Ranger books, with book 6, Arzon's Wolves, coming out in September that I want to read. Favorite series of all time, one of my favorite series of all time. John Flanagan is one of my favorite authors of all time, but I'll explain why in the upcoming archive review that I have of the Royal Ranger series. I have a small book of the Grimm's Brother fairy tales, which is basically the original stories, how the fairy tales were originally told and made, and it's like 50, if not more, not 50, like 30, 40, if not more stories. They're all short stories. They're all like really interesting, simple. And so every like couple of months, or as I feel like I'll just pick these up and go through a couple of short stories in them. I will flag certain things that I liked about them, or like certain like parts that I found interesting, and just keep going like that. It's really nice and really cute. I never wanted to get rid of it because I think it's such a unique. I don't have like a book of short stories like this, so I really enjoy like having this on my shelf. Peak high fiction, peak high fantasy right here. Sword of Kaigen. My 5-star, one of my 5-star reads of 2023, and I made a brief 3 to 4 minute review on this book on the channel if you want to go look at that. Peak masterpiece. Okay, go read The Sword of Kaigen. It's thick, but you won't even realize that you've just read 600 pages. You won't even realize you read 600 pages, I promise you. The House in the Cerulean Sea, one of 2022's 5-star reads, a standalone novel about this caseworker who lives in this magical world, and he's a very by-the-book caseworker who is sent to an orphanage to review the orphanage's rules around taking care of magical children, and he then just discovers his own racism and his own biases towards magical creatures, magical people, magical beings, and there's like a hidden romance in this novel. It's its own standalone single book. It gave me the heartwarming feeling reading this book. I got jitters, I got butterflies. I was just really, really in love with this story. I love the characters. They're adorable, they're cute, and I think you can't go wrong reading The House on the Cerulean Sea. Travis Baldry's Legends and Lattes, a cozy fantasy that I picked up this year. One of my 5-star reads of the year, which was a cozy fantasy. Amazing story about this orc Viv who has come to this new town to try and start a new life for herself by making a coffee shop. So she basically is introducing coffee to the townspeople and trying to make her own coffee shop and her own business out of it after having been a mercenary for a long time. It's super fun, super cute. Like I said, it's very cozy, so there's not a lot of like action. There's like a high aggressive conflict. It's a very like small conflict of like, you know, the issues of starting a coffee shop and kind of how do I get customers in the door, and then the people she interacts with, the other creatures and the other individuals, beings in the story. Amazing. Travis Baldry did a great job, and I just heard that the prequel to this, Bookshops and Bone Dust, is also amazing. Based on reactions from Meg's Tea Room on TikTok, who is the cozy fantasy like queen, and I cannot wait for that book to come out. I could not get an arc of it because I'm not good enough yet. But one day I'm hoping to get good enough to get these arcs like before I have to get the full book. Norris Mythology by Neil Gaiman. I have no clue why I bought this book. I was in the book loft, I was in Columbus, and I was on a book buying frenzy. I saw Norris Mythology and I grabbed it. Have not read it. I don't know what it's about. I just bought it out of vanity. That's about it. So if you read this book, you tell me what it's about. I just have 2 books randomly from the Warrior series, which is a series about cats. Amazing series, by the way. When I tell you it's an amazing series, by the way, it's an amazing series, by the way. But I don't know what else to tell you besides it's just a story about a clan of cats in the world and their struggles in like fighting in inter-clan wars. There becomes a magical aspect to them later on in the series, which is like a weird kind of like twist. But the series, which is like, this was my personality in 6th and 7th grade. Like literally my personality in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade was warrior cats. And it got so aggressive to where my buddy and I made trading cards out of them, or just like on pieces of paper. One of my plans is to actually make those things on pieces of paper into actual trading cards just to like keep and make of my own. But this was my entire personality. I actually want to go back and read them for you guys and kind of give you guys a review on them in the future of like what the actual book series are about, and actually finish the series, because there's 5, I think, because each series like a 6-book like set. There's 5 series of the Warrior series out there. So I really want to read all of them again and kind of tell you guys about them, and I'll do that eventually. You guys probably saw me skip this book because I wanted to wait on it. Basically, this is a picture book of the characters in the Warrior series around, I think, the events of the book, like the first two series, the Warriors and then the New Prophecy. But basically, it kind of outlines the clans, outlines the map for you, and then it takes you through like the stories of each of the clans, right? The Thunder Clan and their beliefs, and then basically their images of all the captains, the cats you encounter in the world. And this was just an amazing, amazing thing for me because, like, you see these characters and you think, this is how I think they look. And then you get this book, right? And you're like, damn, that's Silverstream. Like, that's Silverstream. So I love this book just because it's a really great picture book, dog. Like, honestly, it's a really great picture book. I don't know what else to tell you. All right, come here. This is my random books. This is like my random shelf. Like, shit just goes here, honestly. So, one by one, my most recent purchase, The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart, because I have seen Zoran hasn't stopped talking about it, and I respect Zoran's opinion. I don't know why, because I don't know anything about her, but for some reason I respect her opinion, and I think that's just a credit to how she carries herself and makes her content on Book Talk. But I love the idea of bone magic so much, so I got the book, and I'm going to read it eventually. Hidden Genius by Polina Marinova Pompliano. Polina Marinova Pompliano is the founder of The Profile, which is a company that creates profiles on interesting and successful people in the world. And a profile is a long-form piece of work, a long-form piece of literature that basically talks about an individual, their personality, their experiences, their life, etc. So what she's done, because she's been running The Profile for about 10 years, I believe. She made this book, which is basically her life lessons, or her lessons that she's learned from 10 years of interviewing interesting and successful people in the world. So I really want to read this book, and I'm going to read it and annotate it, and then I'm going to tell you guys about all the lessons that I got from this book and its own video. So look out for that. That's coming sometime soon, because I'm going to start reading this week. Sky Beyond the Storm by Sabat Tahir. I'm pretty sure this is like book 4 of the series, and the only reason I got this was because I was at Half Price Books, and I saw the purple, I saw the feline on the front, I saw the scythe, and I just bought it. It was an impulse buy. I know I would like to get to this series eventually, but this has not been in my like immediate like thought to get to. This was another one of my vanity purchases, similar to the Shadow and Bone. That's about it. I just love the cover art of it, so I got it. All right, the Atlas series by Olivia Blake. Atlas 6 was one of the first books that I read when I was really getting into trying to booktube a lot, because it was just one of the newest books that I found that I thought, oh, I can talk about this book and I can be like current. So I read the book and I was like, holy shit, I did not expect this. I read this book back when it was last year when I'd first started the booktubing, and I'd hurt my back because I was overdoing stuff at the gym, and I was on bed rest for like 3 days. So all I could do was read. I finished this entire book in a day. Sorry, that's a lie. No, it's not a lie. I finished this entire book in a day. Or the first book, I finished the entire book in a day. Just because I had that much to talk. It was just, like, the first half of the book wasn't doing anything for me, and then bam, when one of the, like, plot points hits in the first half of the book, I was sent. I was sucked into that shit. And it just went from there. I have a whole archive review on the channel talking about this book in specific, and then months later this year, end of last year, when the Atlas Paradox came out, I did another 24-hour read of that over on TikTok, talking about like what happens gradually throughout the book in like multiple parts, but reading it all within a day, and then I did an archive review of that book as well. I think this was one of the last like archive reviews of solo books that I've done on the channel, because I want to switch those archive reviews into series as opposed to just a single book, because I understand that somebody might not want to watch a detailed review of a single book, but they might be more interested in watching a detailed review of a whole series. So when the third book comes out, the Atlas Complex, next year, I believe in January, February, I will be once again reading that, hopefully a 24-hour read of that, taking you guys through everything, and then I'll do an archive review of all 3 books together, and maybe make that wrapped up in its own little bow. That's about it. Ninth House by Lee Bardugo. I got this from Book of the Month because I needed a Book of the Month, and I wanted to read Hellbent, but I can't read Hellbent until I read Ninth House. So that's why we have it. I know absolutely nothing about this book. Actually, let's go to the book jacket together, right? Galaxy Alex Stern is the most unlikely member of Yale's freshman class, raised in the Los Angeles hinterlands by a hippie mom. Alex dropped out of school early into a world of shady drug dealer boyfriends, dead-end jobs, and much, much worse. In fact, by age 20, she is the sole survivor of a horrific, unsolved multiple homicide. Some might say she's thrown her life away, but at her hospital bed, Alex is offered a second chance to attend one of the world's most prestigious universities on a full ride. What's the catch? And why her? Still searching for answers, Alex arrives in New Haven, tasked by her mysterious benefactors with monitoring the activities of Yale's secret societies. Their 8 windowless tombs are well-known haunts of the rich and powerful, from high-ranking politicos to Wall Street's biggest players, but their occult activities are more sinister, more extraordinary than any paranoid magic might conceive. They tamper with forbidden magic, they raise the dead, and sometimes they prey on the living. There's the magic. I was waiting. I was like, where's the fucking magic in this book? I know Lee Bardugo knows magic. Where's the magic? That's where the magic is. So now that I've read that, I'm aggressively intrigued. So this might go up more immediately on my TBR. Who knows? The Wishing Game by Meg Schaffer. I needed a book of the month. I needed a book of the month book. So this was the most interesting of the 3 selections that I had, because there were books on the cover. That's about it. I don't want to talk about that anymore. Thank you. The Henna Artist and the Secret Keeper of Jaipur. The Henna Artist is I wanted to read a lot more novels by Indian or Asian authors, because I realized that a lot of the novels that I was reading just growing up were all basically American. I know John Flanagan is Australian, but they were all kind of the same theme of like medieval, American, British, whatever it is. But I never had like Indian. I never had Pakistani. I never had Iranian. I never had Nigerian, African, things like that, right? So I never really read stories from those cultures, so I really wanted to try. So I picked up The Henna Artist. So I thought it'd be interesting. And it was decently interesting. I just didn't really like it that much. It didn't really like, the story itself, I didn't really care for it, because it's a lot of like, it's exactly what Indian culture is, which is why I didn't like it, because I don't like Indian culture, in terms of like, there's a lot of like societal politics. There's a lot of like societal obligations and do this, do that, say this, say that, getting into favor with others, things like that. So I hate all that shit. And so it was just hard for me to get into and finish the book. I finished it. It was just really for me. I got the Secret Keeper of Jaipur because I thought I would like Henna Artist, and then I could just read Secret Keeper of Jaipur immediately. I haven't read it yet. I don't know if I'll ever read it right now in my life. So I keep it. I might give it away. Who knows? If you guys want it, look out for a giveaway in the future. Get me to 1,000 subscribers. And there'll be a giveaway, who knows? So that's the shelf. Just kidding. Last but not least, the Dragon Shrine. You see this up here, right? This is the Dragon Shrine. Everything came together when I read Fourth Wing in May. I knew my life's purpose was to make this shrine. Let's go through it, right? These little fake plants are gifts from my fiance. That was for my like mini bookshelf, but now they just add a little bit of green and a little bit of fake life to my bookshelf. These guys right here, forget it. This is Sorab and Rustam, okay? These are my 2 dragons. I've had these for as long as I can remember, and I don't remember where I ever got them, but they've been with me for most of my life, and they're gonna be with me They're gonna be with me to my journey to the top of creating content. This is Sorab and Rustam, my 2 baby dragons. My fiance, as a housewarming gift, got me these dragon bookends, and I thought, okay, this is the best gift that anyone's ever given me in my life. I have to marry you. I'm marrying her. But I was engaged before any of this happened. I'm just letting you know that I'm going through it, obviously. This is Sorab and Rustam, okay? Whenever you see these guys together, just know the left is Sorab and the right is Rustam, okay? Basically, my baby dragons grew up and are protecting my books. And they're with me on my journey to creating content and being a good content creator. They keep my books safe. I already told it to you. Fucking Fourth Wing, okay? Fourth Wing is great, all right? People like it, people don't like it, people like it, but they don't love it. I get it, it's fine. I just love it because it's a fun-ass book. Okay, it is my favorite, one of my favorite books of the year, just because I had so much fun reading it. I was up till 3 a.m. reading this book, which never happens, by the way. I take my sleep so seriously. I never stay up for anything except for It's Okay Not to Be Okay, the K-drama that still has left a void in my heart, and then other K-dramas after that. Fourth Wing had me up at night reading that shit, and I loved it. I loved it so much. I got the ebook immediately because I was in Hartford when I read it, and then I bought the physical immediately. So a week later, I got the physical copy because I wanted the dragons on the side. And look how perfect look how perfect the shrine works here. It's just all dragons, and dragons are the coolest beings in the world. You saw the Cinda Williams Chima books, dragons on them. You know dragons are the coolest fantasy creatures in the world. So I have a dragon shrine, and that is the top of the book. If I get any other dragon-themed books like this, they will be added to the shrine. But I'm keeping this shelf as the dragon shrine, and that's about it. This was my bookshelf tour of 2023. It was a long one because I just talk and I rant and I banter and I love it. So if you liked this, I really appreciate you watching this far. I hope you got something out of this, some sort of entertainment or some sort of knowledge out of this. I hope that you have a great day. If you are new here, hello once again. If you're new here and you like the content, subscribe, like the video, leave a comment about what you're reading or what you plan to read. Do you like to read? Do you not like to read? Are you in a reading slump? Let me know. I got you, friend. I got you, gang. I got you, archivers. Okay? I got you. Okay? I cannot wait to fill this with more books, and I hope that you guys will be here on the journey with me as I do it. And the next bookshelf tour, if I do this, might do this again next year, but it will just be the books that were added to this, obviously, because if I kept doing the whole thing every single year, I would just stop. I would just keep talking, and then nobody would want to listen to me. That being said, I appreciate you. I hope you have a good day. Go read today, and as always, take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.